the banks generally made the depositors think that if the depositors put money into the bank, well, of course, the bank was going to keep it in the vault. So
That's what we still think now, but it's not true.
Now. Well, it's never been true because, the depositor said, no, I can have my money back anytime I want it, right? And the bank says, oh, of course, yeah, sure, it's your money. And so then the bank turned right around and loaned on that. And not only loaned that money out, but they loaned money on top of it, which they didn't even have, so that the demands against the deposits far exceeded what was in the vault. So, of course, you can play this game for a little while, and then finally the word gets out, and people say, hey, they don't have my money there, and I want my money.
Yeah.
So they had runs on the bank, and people lost their deposits, banks closed, and all that sort of thing.
Well, it's like Bernard Madoff. It works until people need some money.
Yeah, and that always happens eventually. As long as the bubble is expanding, you can make it work. That's how Ponzi's work.
Mm-hmm.
But they cannot go on forever.
That's right.
So eventually the cat's out of the bag. And so this is the condition we had in the United States prior to 1913.
And we're on the gold standard at the time, right?
We're on the gold standard, although the banks violated the gold standard. And that's what I mentioned a moment ago. The states made it legal for them to violate. The states made it legal for the banks to create money. Even though we were on the gold standard, the banks were creating bank notes, putting it into the circulation that were not backed by gold at all. And the state government said, that's okay, you can do it because you're a bank, and that's how banks work. So anyway.
And what did money look like at the time?
Oh, well, there were a lot of different kinds of money in circulation at that time. Banks issued their own currency. And, of course, the Treasury issued its own currency, too. The Treasury was the issuer of the only real official United States money, and that was backed by gold or silver.
Uh-huh.
But it's important to note that when money is backed by gold or silver or anything of tangible value, obviously the quantity is limited.
That's right, unless you can get more gold or silver.
Yeah, that's a terribly annoying inconvenience if you're a banker.
That's true.
And it's even more annoying if you're a politician and you want this money. You want more. Golly, there's not enough of it to go around. So that's why politicians and bankers hate a currency that's backed by anything other than...
They hate limitations, don't they?
They hate limitations on it. So anyway, back to this trip to Jekyll Island, these banks were folding all over the place. People were losing their money in the banks, and there was a great hue and cry among the voters for banking reform. They wanted the government to step in and pass a law that was going to break the grip of the banks over the economy and force them to be good boys and girls and to honor their contracts and to quit cheating people.
And stop going under.
And so that was what people thought they were getting with the Federal Reserve Act, which is a bill to break the grip of the money trust. That's the actual phrase that was so common in those days. Well, obviously now we're looking at the people who drafted the Federal Reserve Act, and they were the money trust. These were the wealthiest people in the world and their institutions that they represented. The wealthiest people in the world. They were the money trust. And so it's obvious that if the voters knew that a bill to break the grip of the money trust was written by the money trust, well, it just wouldn't have gone over too well.
It's like an attorney who works for a company, goes to the FDA, and ends up approving things for the company.
Yeah, of course. It's the same old scam, actually, and it's been going on for... I even hate to think of how many years, but it certainly was started in full force with the Federal Reserve System.
And how many people at the time, Ed, and how many people now always consider the Federal Reserve to be an integral, direct part of the United States government?
Well, most people did then, and
a lot now,
and
believe it or not.
Most people even now, yes. But, and the reality is when you look at these people and the firms they represented, prior to that time, they were competitors. You know, J.P. Morgan was fighting against the Rockefellers, and they were competing with the Rothschilds in Europe for domination of the world monetary markets. Blood all over the battlefield in London and Paris, New York. And here they are, all representing a conglomerate coming to Jekyll Island and coming to an agreement where they're now all going to work together. Well, suddenly you realize what the Federal Reserve System is. These people created a cartel.
Yes.
They decided, let's quit competing with each other. We'll take the biggest players, us, and we'll form a cartel. We'll regulate the industry to our benefit.
Mm-hmm.
We'll keep the competition under control, and we'll convince the voters, the poor boobs, we'll convince them that this is a government agency and it's all for their benefit.
And we'll have the government borrow money from the people.
And we'll finance the government, and that means that eventually we will control the government.
Exactly.
And that's what happened.
Did JFK try to do away with the Federal Reserve?
I do not believe he did, and I know that's a very controversial issue.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that he tried, and that that was one of the reasons, if not the primary one, that he was assassinated. I don't read it that way at all, and I know about the executive order that people cite. I did a lot of research on it, and I find out that executive order did not do the things that people think that it did. And unfortunately, I have to say that JFK, although he was very charismatic and he did a lot of things that people liked, he was a collectivist. He was trained. He got his political education at the London School of Economics in Europe, and that was set up and funded by the Fabian Socialists International Group. And he was taught there all of the tenets of internationalism and banking as it is now understood that we're talking about. JFK was never a serious opponent of the banking system.
What does the Fed want to do now, Ed? What's their goal?
Well, the Fed wants to do now what the Fed has always wanted to do, and that is, we must remember, it's a cartel. So what do cartels want to do? All cartels have one purpose, and that is to advance the benefit of the members of the cartel.
Whether it's the oil cartel or the drug cartel.
Sugar, banana, I don't care. Banking cartels are no different. Except, though I suppose there is one difference, and that is nobody in the sugar cartel will go before Congress and say, well, we raised the price of sugar this month because we wanted to help the American people.
Yeah.
They would never do that. But the representatives of the banking cartel, Bernanke, will go to Congress and say, well, we raised interest rates because we want to help the American people. We want to slow down inflation, or whatever good thing they claim that they want to do. When in reality, whatever they do, raise or lower interest rates, expand or limit credit, or create money out of nothing and give it to somebody and not somebody else, it's always done for the benefit of the members of the cartel, period.
Didn't Alan Greenspan, who used to head up the Federal Reserve, at one point in his career be one of those staunch proponents of gold for the monetary system?
Yes, he was. In fact, I quoted one of his papers that he wrote as a young college professor in The Creature from Jekyll Island. It was so stunningly good. It's not very long, the part that I quoted, maybe a page and a half, in which Greenspan laid out in brilliant detail the advantages of a gold-backed currency and how that without a currency backed by gold, that governments would be able to steal the wealth of its citizens and destroy the nation. He was very good at it.
What happened to him?
Well, I think biblically you might say he was taken to the top of the mountain.
They got to him.
They got to him, of course. He was soon after that he was employed by the J.P. Morgan financial dynasty. He was promoted. He was offered a chance to be head of the Federal Reserve. I'm sure he was told that he would never have another financial worry in his life, and he said, "I'll take it."
Unbelievable.
And Bernanke's the same way. All of these people are bought and sold like so many pounds of hamburger. We must remember that
Even though the president appoints, it's really not, is it?
Oh no, the president appoints, but he never even knows these people when he appoints them. So where does he get the name?
Yeah.
It doesn't come from his address book, I can assure you. It comes from those people that supply the funding to the campaigns, the people that have made the president. They're the ones who tell the president who to appoint.
When we come back, tell us, Ed, next hour, who the cartel members are, some of their goals. We'll talk about this bank bailout program, how you create money as well. This is an incredible story, the creature from Jekyll Island. I'll be back in just a moment on Coast to Coast AM.